I remember being a kid back in 2003 and booting up Fire Emblem for the Game Boy Advance for the first time. I'd never played a tactical role-playing game before, nor a game where the defeat of one of your units permanently removed them from play. And while I have been playing Fire Emblem games ever since, I didn't think I'd ever have the opportunity, being 32 years old currently, to experience the same difficulty, the same compelling storytelling, nor the same fear for my units, which admittedly is why I played on a difficulty where permadeath wasn't a thing. Don't judge me. Which is why when I was reached out to by the studio behind Lost Eidolons, who have a mostly positive rating on Steam since it launched, to take a sponsored look at the game, I was overjoyed. Getting paid to play games you actually enjoy is the best job in the world. With this in mind, if you enjoy tactical RPGs as much as I do and you're itching for something to play, click that download link in the description and the pinned comment below to be taken directly to download the game. But what is Lost Eidolons? Before we discuss that, let me just verify that everything is turned up to max. This is a game that you're going to want to make sure you have maxed out because character models and scenery alike look absolutely fantastic. Lost Eidolons is a very heavily narrative-driven turn-based tactical RPG. The story follows Eden, beginning with you leading a small mercenary group with a camp of equal stature, and culminating in you leading an army that all the kingdoms of the world fear. An army consisting of powerful warriors, like powerful. Huh? What? When I asked my cameraman to capture footage of me giving like epic motivational speeches, leading skirmishes, boosting morale around the camp, this is not what I meant. You begin your game with a short tutorial explaining core mechanics, how to move, what weapons are more or less effective against which armor type, and admittedly, I was very underprepared. Which is not an over-exaggeration. I lost several units in the tutorial. Something I had not anticipated. Again, thankfully I opted for the story mode as there was no functional permadeath penalty for my units. And of course, you're kinda supposed to lose, so there's that. Following the introduction, we're presented with a cinematic cutscene, a multitude of in-game cutscenes after that. We're introduced to various members of our mercenary group and given full, direct control over our characters. This time was no tutorial. This time, if you mess up, there were no excuses. This is also where we're first introduced to elemental effects, how terrain has a direct effect on gameplay, and subsequently your units. Wet terrain, icy terrain, how different elemental abilities have increased or decreased effectiveness depending on what type of terrain you're on. Elemental effects create a much more dynamic battlefield by having magic interact directly with the geography, freezing opponents that are doused in water or lighting bushes on fire, dealing increased damage to enemies or allies within it. Battles themselves follow a pretty traditional formula. Before battle, you're given the option of selecting which characters you want to deploy onto the field. Each character has their own class and can advance into more powerful classes as they continue to level and as you continue to progress through to additional chapters. As you can see on screen, we have access to basic classes like the commoner, beginner classes like the fighter and the mage, advanced classes like the priest and the hunter, and master classes like the ranger, the berserker, the warlock, and the templar. Each class excels at different things and has different gear that they can equip. As an example, Eden begins as the commoner class, can ascend into the squire, and down the line, I'm assuming knight, templar, or vanguard. I haven't gotten that far yet, so I'm unable to say with certainty, but given his affinity with the melee class archetypes, I'd expect as much. While squires and fighters can equip the same weapons, they wear different types of armor, meaning that they serve different purposes and take increased or decreased damage from the same weapon types. Each class has their own unique abilities, some increasing damage done, some taunting enemies, others pushing out large amounts of AoE pressure or immobilizing enemies with crowd control. The sheer depth that these devs went to provide a significant amount of customization for your characters is glorious. Being able to build any character in almost any way I want? Yes, please. And to top it off, depending on your class, you'll see an aesthetic change to your appearance, meaning that you might want to end up leveling several characters as certain classes, not saying who or why. After you're done building your characters, you'll deploy your units onto the field. You can rearrange their formation, you can swap certain units for others, and then the battle begins. You move your units around a grid several tiles at a time. The enemy does the same. You're then required to utilize stratagem to think ahead and decide what units need to go where to combat your enemies. If you send too many squishies the direction of melee units, they'll likely end up being mowed down. Likewise, you can't send your close range units into range of archers and mages. You'll move vertically and horizontally across a single map at a time as you attempt to clear your mission objectives. These typically consist of kill X target, after which you'll successfully win the stage, progress to the next chapter, and make your way back to your camp. Speaking of chapters and camps, there are, as of this video, 27 chapters present, totaling 30 to 50 hours worth of playtime depending on how good you are at the game. Each chapter takes place in a specific part of certain regions and features characters unique to the area that you're in. Chapters take the form of an encounter and several cutscenes. Cutscenes take place before each battle, at times during the battle, and then after the successful completion of battles. An example is this scene right here, where this guy, the bad guy, gives the hot chick on the floor there a knife to kill you with, and instead of just picking up the knife and, I don't know, like shanking the bad guy there, she sits there, looking pretty. But you know what, that is okay, because we make equally as questionable decisions. Like when we leap towards the knife, we pick it up, pin the bad guy against the wall there, hold it to his throat, threaten him, and instead of killing him, we decide to just throw the knife on the ground and, to be taken to the dungeons. Combat in-game is turn-based. You field your units, you move each one of them attacking enemies before ending your turn and allowing the enemies to take theirs, if there's any left. There's a trinity system in place. Axes work best against heavy armor, swords against light armor, spears and bows against cloth armor, and then magic just destroys everything and everyone. Encounters start off pretty easy. I was only ever in real danger once or twice in the first 5 chapters, but after chapter 6, things got substantially more difficult. There were more units. Some of the units were actual monsters. Heck, I went up against a manticore, like literal monsters of legend. That thing almost one-shot my tanks and required I tackle the engagement with the utmost finesse. Thankfully though, healing magic coexists with elemental magic, allowing me to attempt to keep my units topped up. There were several instances, the Manticore fight being the most impactful and dangerous, where you're presented with a unique weak point system. This requires you position your units adjacent to the icons that are displayed by the enemy. Axes, magic, swords. Doing so will allow for your units to deal exponentially higher damage without the repercussions of the enemy retaliating against you. This makes fights against larger, more powerful enemies significantly more fun, but also require a lot more forethought, something that I'm really not good at. Additionally, there's a rapport system present in game. This is accessible via your camp and positively affects your units, going as far as opening up recruitment options for new units. It does take a little work, but it's definitely worth it. All in all, Lost Eidolons turned out to be everything that I was hoping it'd be. A fun, difficult, turn-based tactical RPG with a lot of story, a lot of class depth and identity, and just literally so much more. Leveling, building your characters into something that fits your vision is integral to a game like this, and they definitely don't miss the mark. My only fault with the game was that at times there were more enemies than I realistically had resources to deal with, which meant that I was required to sacrifice some of my units to complete the stage. But maybe I'm just not as good at tactical games as I used to be. I am old now after all. Again, if this looks like a game you'd be interested in playing, I urge you to go ahead and click that link in the description of the pinned comment below to download the game.